handsome young youth with shoulder-length hair sits in a London garret,
What?
pondering.
Shoulder-length hair, handsome young...
Golden. Shoulder-length golden hair. You think it's me, don't you?
Okay, give me a description of a garret just before we keep going.
Oh, it's a piece of a building in which you can sit.
Okay, cool. Like, it's an attic? Is it like an attic you can rent out, isn't it?
Sure, with a window.
Okay, cool.
So he's sitting there pondering. He is composing his first book, a work he believes will transform him from a penniless foreigner into a literary cause célèbre, like a good literary guy. But he must answer a self-imposed question, which is, what did Taiwanese aristocrats eat for breakfast?
Okay.
He hasn't asked himself that.
Is that part of his book or not part of his book?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's his inspiration. So inspiration hits, and he finally starts writing, all who can live without working eat their breakfast about 7 o'clock in the morning. First, they smoke a pipe of tobacco. Then they drink bohea, green or sage tea. Afterwards, they cut off the head of a viper and suck the blood out of the body.
Yes, they do. I wasn't expecting viper blood as your breakfast routine.
It's not your first. It's not my go-to. I tend to have toast and peanut butter, but this is Taiwan. This, in my humble opinion, he concludes, is the most wholesome breakfast a man can make. About a year later, he's with an assemblage of gentlemen from the fellows of the Royal Society, and they gathered to debate a few things, including the plausibility of a letter which was written by a woman who pretended to live without food. They wanted to scrutinize a rare prize from overseas, which was the forked penis of the male opossum.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who wouldn't want to scrutinize a forked penis? I like the way it's the male opossum. It's not on the female, it's on the male. They're very precise people, the fellows of the Royal Society.
Well, I'm sure there are penises in opossums occasionally, not in the right place.
Ladies?
Yeah,
maybe. Well, then are they ladies? I mean, whoa. I know. They're also looking at a new invention, which is the world's first air pump capable of creating a vacuum. And it's the first time anyone's seen it, and they're very well aware that this hand-blown glass bell could suddenly implode at any moment. So they're very excited.
Okay.
It's an exciting time. And last on the agenda is our golden-haired youth. So at the time, an aging Isaac Newton is sitting at the head of the table.
Now we've got some context for time. All right.
Yes, we do. He catches sight of the speaker's pale skin and honey-coloured locks. A member of the audience privately notes to himself that this foreigner seems to look like a young Dutchman. But the speaker then declares he's actually a native of one of the world's most remote, mysterious, and decidedly Asian nations.
Welcome to the Wholesome Show, the science podcast where we recommend a wholesome breakfast that could or could not include viper blood.
Any kind of serpent will do. I don't think it has to be a viper.
For people who sit up the back of the classroom.
Yeah, in which we ask the questions that are basically dumb, pointless, or facile, so you don't have to.
We're very helpful like that. Very helpful.
Helpfully facile, yes.
The Wholesome Show is me, Will Grant, Dr. Will Grant, as Rod tells me I better say.
Finally. Well done on getting your PhD. Oh, and me, Dr. Roderick Griffin Lamberts, Esquire and Fellow of the Royal Society, but only in the 18th century.
That's the best time to be in the Royal Society.
Wasn't it, though?
It's way lamer now. I'm sure there are lovely people there now, way lamer now. The Wholesome Show is brought to you by the Australian National Centre for the Public Awareness of Science.
Whether they choose to or not.
The Australian National Centre for the Public Awareness of Science, whether they choose to or not,
yes,
is one of the world's foremost centres for science communication needs.
Yes, it is. And it's also very good at talking about opossum penises and golden-haired Dutchmen.
Okay, golden-haired Dutchman.
Will, get up the back.
I am up the back. I want to learn something about this viper blood drinking guy.
Get comfy. Look, I'll just quickly note up front, most of what I'm going to tell you today is based on 2 essays, one from the Public Domain Review and by a guy called Benjamin Breen, and another from The Atlantic by a guy called, I think it's a guy, Kembrew McLeod. I've never heard of a name Kembrew before, but I'm just getting that out of the way up front because these sources are wonderful. There's a few other bits and pieces in there, but these guys are great. Anyway,
cool.
Our blonde-haired youth, our golden-haired youth, I should say.
In the time of Isaac Newton.
Yes. He was probably born in southern France, perhaps in the Languedoc or Provence area, probably to Catholic parents, likely somewhere between 1679 and 1684.
Is that just because most parents in France at the time were Catholic, or you could spot it on him?
It was pretty popular in that kind of time.
Oh, that's boring. That's boring. I was hoping he looked Catholic, which it sounds a little bit racist.
I don't know. What's a Catholic look like? I mean, they're born with a little purple hat. I know that.
These days, who knows? But,
Could be anybody. You could be one for all I know.
Okay. He's from the Languedoc.
Maybe. And he was probably born somewhere between 1679, 1684. It's not 100% clear.
Do we know anything about this guy?
Look, his actual name's not known either.
Cool. So someone somewhere, somewhen
was born,
did some stuff, and he drank
probably.
He drank a snake for breakfast. Okay.
Well, no, he spoke about how these folk in exotic lands drank a snake's blood for breakfast. We'll call him George.
All right.
That is one of the names he went by, and we'll get to that later on. An autobiography was released, obviously written by him after he died, and it said he was educated in a Franciscan school and then a Jesuit academy.
Okay.
That's his claim. He claims his teachers said he had a, quote, uncommon gift for language, or uncommon genius for language.
Okay, all right.
And he was a bit of a child prodigy, if he does say so himself, and he did. He became fluent in Latin by about 8 years old.
That's an additional language to the one he spoke. Because if that was his birth language, not so great, but
not that impressive.
Yeah, I think as an additional language, that's quite good. Depends how much.
Yeah, Latin's hard. I studied Latin. Well, sorry, I was in Latin classes for 3 and a bit years.
Yeah, Latin's hard in 1960s Australia. I'm just
60s. You dog.
I'm just sledging here. 1960s Australia. It might be a little bit tough, but I'm sure there are times when it's easier. So you can imagine,
well, I don't think it's ever easier, but it might have been more around you.
Yeah, it might have been more around you, and it's more worthwhile. So
it wasn't around us much back then, except in Latin class. Oh, and Monty Python. He claims, again, he excelled in competition with children twice his age.
What sort of competition? Darts?
The ones where you compete.
Chess? Running races?
Chess, nuclear bomb detonation, jumping up and down.
So he's good at stuff.
Juggling cats.
He's good at stuff.
Yeah. He is. His autobiography says so. And apparently encounters with sophistic philosophy tutors, particularly one, rendered him disenchanted with academicism. So around 15, 16, he stopped going to school.
Okay, cool.
Which back then pretty much
he was a child prodigy. He probably didn't need school at that point.
No, school needed him. Apparently at some point early after this, he decided to pretend to be an Irish pilgrim on his way to Rome.
Okay.
And according to a Wikipedia entry, which is the only thing I could find on this, he did this in order to travel safely and affordably in France. I don't know why.
So they're stopping other people, but not Irish pilgrims. Irish pilgrims can come through. Any other nationality of pilgrim, so Dutch pilgrims or German pilgrims, stop there. But
yeah, fuck you. I'm Irish. Oh, cool. Come through, pilgrim. So I don't know why, but apparently that seemed to help, or at least he thought so. He learned English. He forged a passport. He stole a pilgrim's cloak and a staff from a church, and off he went. And he started going around France bullshitting people about his Irish background.
Why didn't he?
Because people from France had actually...
Just to clarify here, I think people in Ireland spoke Irish or Gaelic at the time. Why didn't he learn that rather than English? Or fake being an English pilgrim?
Well, he was in France, so obviously English was huge there.
I'm just critiquing this guy, and he's 500 years ago, so it's a bit unfair.
It's fair that he's worthy of critique, I think. I think you've picked up on that early. He's worthy of at least a question or two.
All right, okay, fair enough.
So he's learned English. He's forged his passport. He's wandering around France.
Are we allowed to call him George? Are we allowed to call him George?
We can call it George.
Okay, you said the word. George. You said the word George. I'm just trying to get a handle on this guy.
Our golden-haired youth, George. Golden George. We'll call him that. But basically, it's difficult to bullshit people that you're from Ireland if you hadn't been there and weren't from there in France, because people from France are kind of familiar with Ireland.
Are they?
Even back then.
What do they got in Ireland? And he's like, Guinness.
Taters and whiskey. And he's like, really? Are you sure?
The Blarney Stone. I've been there.
Exactly. So he had to pivot to a more exotic disguise.
Okay.
I don't know why. I don't know why he felt he needed to, but he did.
What did he do? What's his exotic disguise?
Oh, it's obvious. He decided to impersonate a converted Japanese heathen.
Cool.
As if you wouldn't. I mean, that's my go-to as well.
In this era, did they know much about either converted Japanese heathens or regular Japanese heathens?
Look, some pieces. But I think this was more successful than pretending to be an Irishman, which is funny to me. And he'd back up. He'd try and cover his ass by exhibiting unusual customs, like he'd eat raw meat spiced with cardamom, and he'd sleep while sitting upright in a chair.
Okay.
But apparently, this is bizarre and heathenistic practice. He never got to Rome.
Oh.
So, haha. But from about 1700 to 1702, he was meandering around Germany a bit.
Pretending to be a Japanese heathen.
I think so. It becomes a little blurry. He also kind of was a mercenary and a soldier in the Netherlands for a while. And at the end of this period, around 1702, he started claiming he was a native of Formosa, which is what Taiwan was called.
Taiwan. Old name for Taiwan.
Yes. So now he starts saying he's a Formosan. And he said he'd been snatched away from Formosa by a Jesuit by the name of Father Derode from Avignon. Mm-hmm. So now he's claiming he was a kidnapped Formosan. I mean, why wouldn't you?
It's a thing. It's a thing. I mean,
who among us can honestly say we haven't done that ourselves? I mean, you have, right?
Look, for a little while, but that was to sneak across the Queensland border when there was.
Yeah, it was fair. More useful now. I mean, we all go through the phase. So apparently, according to him, this sinister missionary, Father Derode, brought him to Europe and pressured this fella into converting from paganism to Catholicism. Mm-hmm. He was thrown into prison after resisting the efforts of these people to convert him, but soon he escaped, as you do. Then soldiers apparently belonging to some bloke called an elector in Cologne, so in Germany, captured George, shipped him off to another batch of scheming Catholics, as they put it.
Oh.
But he got away again.
Oh, okay, good.
Dutch soldiers detained him. They tried to make him a Calvinist. He didn't want that either, because apparently he couldn't buy into the doctrine of predestination. And I mean, who can?
But he's happy with Catholicism, though, just to clarify here.
Well, no, he was running away from that too. He's a difficult fellow. So Catholicism wasn't the go. Calvinism wasn't the go. While he was in the Netherlands, though, he met a guy, a Scottish Anglican army chaplain called Alexander Innes.
Okay.
And he apparently mesmerized him with the ways of the Church of England. And so he went, I like this. I like the Church of England.
This is the right one. Finally, I found the right one for me.
This is the good stuff.
If I'm still pretending to be a heathen from Formosa or Japan,
Formosa now. He's running hard on Formosa. He's a Formosan.
I'm a fake Formosan, but what I want is some Church of England. Okay, cool.
Have a little bit of that. So Innes claimed he converted the heathen to Christianity, and he christened him George Psalmanazar. P.S. Psalmanazar.
Psalmanazar. That's a great name.
And this is the name by which he was known, and this whole story about him is attached. Okay. George Psalmanazar. And this is apparently...
Enter George Psalmanazar.
Into George. I'm going to keep calling him George because Psalmanazar, I'll trip on that all the time. And I am one hell of a linguist. So it wouldn't be fair to you if you had to keep saying it. That's why I'm doing it, man. I'm doing it for you. Apparently, this was a name that was based on the Assyrian king Shalmaneser V, who's referred to in the Bible. So the Scottish Anglican goes, you are now George Psalmanazar.
After that guy. There was a famous guy. You're named after the famous guy. Okay.
You're him, my Formosan golden-haired buddy. Around 1703, they both went to London, George and the priest. And George said later on, at his arrival in London, Mr. Innes, who and some worthy clergymen of his acquaintance, introduced him to the Bishop of London, and they soon became buddies. So the bishop, his clergy, and lay friends all decided they quite liked George.
George is a new guy. Hey, look, there's a new guy at the parties. He's a good guy.
That's what, thank God. He's an Anglican. He turned into an Anglican, which makes him, super.
And he's got cool stories from both Formosa and Japan and Ireland and the Languedoc. But some of them are true. Who cares?
Yeah. He's and maybe guy. Provence, and he's between the ages of 7 and 400. We don't know, but we love this guy.
He's good at parties. He's good at parties.
Yeah. So basically the upper echelons of society in London thought this guy was a bit awesome. And so he became famous. So society types would invite him to dinner and he'd speak gibberish and he'd stuff mouthfuls of bloody meats.
Not cool. Not cool. I look, it's not great to pretend you are from another people as it is, but speaking gibberish, I assume this is his take on what he would call Formosan or Japanese or something.
Just Formosan.
Okay.
He's not a multiple racist. He's just a Formosan who people don't know what they speak.
I recognise that, and I recognise that people might have done that, but speaking gibberish, pretending to be other people, just don't do it. Just not cool.
Don't do it unless it's the 1800s. Otherwise, people may think ill of you. So he'd get invited to lots of dinners, and his weirdness basically grabbed him a whole bunch of attention. But also at this time, there was a serious hunger for travel stories from far away and exotic places.
Of course. So
this was his time. This is perfect. There was also a really strong anti-Catholic and anti-Jesuit sentiment around England or Britain at this time. So when people heard that he'd been abducted by these terrible Jesuits, people thought, "Oh, this poor bugger, we like him even more. Let's come to my arms, brother." So yeah, he was living the high life and tripping balls. He was having a great time. So he told stories about Formosan culture because it turns out fuck all people knew anything about it. It was mysterious and distant.
Except the people that live there. The people. The people in Europe didn't know much about this.
Not a lot.
Okay.
Not a lot. And it seems George never left Europe ever in his entire life. So this makes it even more fun. So he blew them away in London, and he had a far out wacky accent that no one could quite place. And people got to the point where they said, we need to know more. Tell me more. We've got to know more about Formosa. So naturally he published a book. And this book sounds fabulous. It's still available, but not easily. It contained a political history of Formosa, including wacky conquests and weird intrigues of the court. Fold-out plates of the Formosan language and numerical system.
Fold-out plate. Is that like that's the color pictures inside the books?
Okay. Yeah, like an old school. What are we? 18th century, 17th,
the glossy
18th century.
bit, the nice bit with some pictures.
Centerfold. Basically, some naked ladies. Yeah. I don't think there are any naked ladies. They probably were in Formosa.
Okay.
It had information about biology, zoology, their food, illustrations of native clothing and architecture.
And this is all based on...
Oh, Formosa, man.
Okay. His mental Formosa? Or did he plagiarize? Did he at least read the Wikipedia article?
He really did. No, not a thing. Made the whole lot up.
Okay, great.
Every damn word. It's fantastic. He may have culled bits from other areas, but he basically constructed this whole thing, which is wild. I think it's fabulous. It also included a reproduction of a letter from the Formosan king. To the Formosan king by the king of Japan. No one asked how he came to get his hands on this letter. It was just like, okay,
yeah,
that seems cool.
Did it say what the letter said?
No.
Hi, King of Formosa. I'm the King of Japan.
Yeah, the Japans and the Formosans had a connection, although that also seemed blurry, which we'll get to, or rather, George will get to. It's also said the book contained a lovely image of a grill used to roast the hearts of little boys. Because why wouldn't you?
Cool. Okay, that's you're sledging people a lot here, saying that they roasted the hearts of little boys.
No, not back then. That was considered cool.
Oh, look, I would invite someone to a party who said they'd been to a place or came from a place where they roasted the hearts of little boys, so long as they weren't someone who did it themselves.
And we're planning on demonstrating it at your party?
I'd love to, come to the party and tell us a little bit about the heart roast. That's just...
You have a hell of a fire pit. I reckon you could roast quite a few hearts.
I'm sure I could. I'm sure I technically could. I just feel like when you're making up stories about people, you don't have to make them that horrible.
Oh, get comfy. Get comfy.
Okay.
So the book took him only allegedly 2 months to write, and it sold out immediately. And I can imagine it would.
Look, when you don't have to check the sources, when you can just make shit up as wild as you want, cool. It doesn't take very long.
But it's still going to look coherent, I mean, I think this is worthy of some support just for the effort.
I'm up to page 200, and I said they ate the testicles of little boys, not the hearts of little boys back in page 100. You got to fact check all these things.
Yeah. And you can't just go back and, delete. You've got to, re-quill or whatever it may be.
Where's my continuity guy?
Yeah, exactly. And, he was just a young lad living in a garret. He didn't have time for that. So the book was called Get Comfy. This is going to take a while. That's not the name of the book.
No, all old-timey books had like 4 subtitles. It was like... Yeah.
I think this might be a record breaker.
Give it to me.
An historical and geographical description of Formosa, an island subject to the Emperor of Japan, giving an account of the religion, customs, manners, etc. of the inhabitants, together with a relation of what happened to the author in his travel, particularly his conferences with the Jesuits and others in several parts of Europe. Also, the history and reasons of his conversion to Christianity, with his objections against it in defense of paganism, and their answers, to which is prefixed a preface in vindication of himself from the reflections of a Jesuit lately come from China, with an account of what was passed between them, by George Psalmanazar, a native of the said island, now in London.
That is brilliant. I love it. I think all titles back then were basically a mini version of the book. Like it was just, you squish it down and go, what happens in the book? Well, these are all of the things. I better give you an accurate
Here's the book.
title.
I'm just going to leave out a couple of verbs and some conjunctions and yeah.
They never went for the evocative title as well. They never went for, on the road. It's just, I got into my car and then I drove across and I sat with this guy and we told each other stories, and there was also some drugs here and I thought about some other things. So
Yep. And here's what other people thought about those things. And this is my response. That also comes into it, by the way. I wrote it. Here's where I used to live and here's where I live now.
There was a bit that I heard there that sounded like it was in brackets.
Yes.
Also,
in defense of paganism was in brackets.
So literally he got brackets into the title. Awesome.
Okay. He got brackets. I mean, also it's basically 1, 2, 3, 4 colons and a semicolon and a set of brackets and a few commas. It's gold. This is one of the best titles I've ever come across. And yes, we've read some long titles.
Old-timey people are so good. I love them.
It's wild. It's absolutely wild. So you got to try and guess what it's about. According to one of the essays on George, the one from the Atlantic, McLeod, he said, throughout the book, Psalmanazar sounded like an anthropology major tripping on peyote. It's a great description. Like, what are you talking about? So George claimed he was a Formosan aristocrat. He was reared from infancy in the capital city, and he was tutored in Greek by an evil Jesuit.
So just stepping back, I do think that, not that I run an anthropology master's or honours or PhD program, but I have friends that do. I do think one assignment they should do is make up a country. And
fucking big assignment.
How much fun would it be though? Your job is to make up a whole country, and it's got to be plausible. It's got to hang together.
Yeah.
And is it racist?
You got to remember this.
Would that be racist? Making up a whole country, like if this is the land of bzz, and that's not racist. So you
can make up the racism too.
Yeah, there's got to be racism. Name
but
a country
you could and this is a terrible thing to say about these people because they don't like it.
Yeah.
Or what you could do is make up a country that's way better than us, and so we're punching up. So it can't be racist.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Yeah, you can say whatever.
But really, making up an internally consistent language and writing system now, that's a big deal.
Oh, people do that all the time, though. That's linguists. That's the bit. Yeah, they do it for like the TV shows. The TV shows for the Klingon and for the horse guys in Game of Thrones. The horse guys in Game of Thrones. You know, the
Dothraki.
The Dothraki. Yeah, those ones. They made that up. I don't know how much they make it up, but I think they make up enough that you can say, I don't like that. I do like that. Here's a golden crown.
It's simultaneously the coolest and most revoltingly nerdsome thing I can think of, like
100%.
Someone saying, I actually invented a whole language and it's functional and you could learn it, we could use it. There's a part of me that just goes, well done, man. That's just fucking amazing.
Wasn't it Tolkien? Like Tolkien was one of the early ones to do this because he was a linguist, but he also wrote, obviously, Lord of the Rings and things like that.
I've heard of that.
But he liked to, the main things he wanted to do for it was make up the language and make it pretty consistent. So
he did Elvish, didn't he? That was his gig?
Yeah. Yeah.
A friend told me, I obviously haven't read that shit. I'm fucking tough.
As if, man, you're a nerd. You're a nerd from Nerd Town.
I'm so cool. These glasses aren't even real. So in this, so George, he said he was a Formosan aristocrat, reared from infancy in the capital, tutored in Greek by an evil Jesuit. I don't think the fact that he was tutored in Greek is what made the Jesuit evil. I think that was
but I still like it. I still, as a bad guy from like an Aladdin story, like a Disney movie, you do need an evil tutor.
Yeah, and with a religious undertone, actually hardcore overtone. Really, the Jesuits are strange. You either hear stories about how awesome and piss artisty they are, or how terrible and wrong and bizarre they are. I never hear anything in between.
Could be
I've
both.
never heard any story that goes Jesuits, whatever.
No one says they're the meh end of evangelism.
I hear they're all drunks though, and so I kind of respect that because what else are you going to do if you can't bone the ladies or the men? Bone what you want. He refuses to reveal his Formosan name for reasons.
Okay. Yeah.
Never specified. He just doesn't reveal his Formosan name. That's how he is. But of course, no one that George ever came across in his real life had ever been there. So he could make up every bloody thing about it. Literally everything.
So he's literally like the backpacker from England touring around Bondi Beach, and his reputation is a long way away. And so he can do whatever he wants. And so he might do some things that are not all above board.
Just 1 or 2 million things. Also, because he was clearly a savage, but he'd converted, and he was light-skinned, and he spoke fluent English. He went to Anglican church services. He hated Catholics, so he's a very safe exotic.
He fits right in.
Yeah. Like it's weird. He fits in so well. It's almost as if he was born here.
Maybe.
Here are some descriptions from the book because there's no way I wasn't getting into some of those. It's wonderful. I love it, and there's no toilet humor in this. So for people listening, thinking, it's Rod's turn, no toilet humor. You can.
I'm sure I've done a toilet humor story once. I'm sure I have.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's not your stock in trade though. Yeah. Like even when I try not to, there's always something. I can't help myself.
He didn't invent some sort of weird toileting thing.
Maybe he did, but I didn't read the whole book. I got a day job. Yeah. I've still got to bust tables and
they
shit
with their ass pointing up. It comes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You got to wait until you can actually.
They make a little
expel it from
downward
your body.
dog pose, and the poo comes vertically out.
Upward dog, like you're one of those sun worshippers and getting it. So he said Formosa Basin was a prosperous island nation. It was populated by skillful and learned people. The capital was called
Mr. Formosa? Big Formosa?
Ternesta. No, it's spelled Xtern, Ternetsa. I'm just going to call it the capital from now on.
And is that, I mean, Taipei now, but that's not based on any sort of.
I don't think Taiwan actually exists, does it? I think it's a made-up country.
No, Taiwan's close to a country. Depends on who you ask.
It does depend on who you ask, and I don't want to ask anyone. Honestly, it just seems there's enough controversy in the world today.
Yeah, you don't have to solve that problem. Not your problem to solve.
I don't. No, I've got so many other problems, like whether to drink red or white tonight. It's complicated. So Formosa, he said, was a place which oscillates strangely between civility and savagery.
Mm-hmm. As many places do.
Well, I know my house does. Doesn't yours?
Yes.
Yeah, you got children. Men walked naked except for gold or silver plates to cover their dicks and balls, basically.
Cool. Are they like dinner plates or would just?
That's what I like to imagine. Yeah.
And the bum region, you've got a plate on the silver on the front, gold on the back, or something like that.
Well, he didn't. Yeah, this is genitals, so there's nothing. Maybe you leave the bung out. Maybe that's a mark of respect.
Sure.
I'll be suspicious of a guy. I mean, I don't want to meet a person I can't see their butthole. I'd be like, no, I don't know if you're genuine. Can you imagine if you did though? Like everyone, that's a world. It's not toilet humor, but we got butts in there. Apparently, his countrymen possess a quote very sharp wit. They are capable of making pictures with great art and skill, as well as porcelain dishes, a technology unknown to European craftsmen at the time.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know.
They have no shoemakers, no brewers, and no bakers. No brewers, no bakers.
Well, he's just saying your beer's really good here. He's flattering his host. Your beer and your bread is so good here. I love your beer and bread.
It's true that you're in England. What are you going to say they do well?
They have great plates over back in Formosa. You should check out their plates.
We're no threat to you, but your beer fully rocks. Apparently, they used crude pine torches for lights. They used horses and camels for transport, and they dwelled underground in circular houses.
Nice.
Obviously.
I like living underground.
In a circular house. So you can just do laps when you're bored or in isolation. Apparently, Formosan parents refused to beat their children, which is a level of tolerance thoroughly unknown in Europe. People were like, they didn't beat their kids.
There's something wrong with them, those savages. They eat their hearts, but don't beat them. This is so weird.
Yeah. Every year they sacrifice the hearts of 18,000 young boys and boys to gods, and their priests ate the bodies.
Wow. 18,000.
18,000.
That seems a large number. I mean, more than zero is a large number of children to be sacrificed and eaten, but still 18,000 is quite a lot. I don't know, how big was he saying Formosa was at the time? Is it a huge?
Why do you hate religion, man? Why are you going down on religion, man? It's just their beliefs.
Okay.
I mean, I thought you were better than that.
But I get it. If you are saying, if you were giving something to the gods that you care about, then that's a big one. You know, the one that always gets me is people that go to a wishing well, and there's like, there's this is going to give you luck or something like that, or I'm throwing money for the god or the local deity that lives here, and they throw like a 20-cent coin, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, they would be pissed off. Like if I'm the god of that wishing well, and you're giving me 20 cents, I am not giving you a good wish. I
want to check for 10 grand.
Yeah, it's got to hurt. You've got to give us some, and so sacrificing 18,000 children, that is really showing that you care. So at least
only boys though, they're not monsters.
At least it's commitment.
I agree. I mean, I'm on board. I'd sacrifice anyone's kid. Not yours. They're lovely.
Sure.
He claimed that two philosophers who were called Zeroboabel. I've never read these out loud. This is exciting. And Chorachemachin.
Sure. Practice in front of the listeners. They don't mind.
That's how I roll. I like to keep it real.
And you're the one that sledges my linguistic abilities.
I really do. There's no pretending.
I have never fluffed a word ever.
No, you haven't. You can't even tell what word it is. So you can't tell if it's mangled. No, you're very good at Russian. Apparently, these two philosophers rose to prominence and insisted the Formosans devote themselves to a single powerful and, depending on what I read, possibly ox-shaped god. Depends on the source.
Yeah.
They built a giant temple for a high priest and whose name was Gnotoi Bonzo.
That does sound made up. The Bonzo bit?
Bonzo.
Mr. Bonzo.
I think he was tired that night. He's like, what's he called? Fucking bonzo. I don't care. I'm sick of making stuff up right now.
Oh, he's the PhD student. It's 11 o'clock at night. He's like, I got to finish this chapter. Gnota bonzo. Yeah. Cool.
This is Johan. He's a Formosan guy.
I'd like to see the interview where he's saying, look, the names are hard to make up. I can make up the other stuff, but the names are tough.
Yeah. Yeah. And some people said, there was another source that suggested that the giant temple where they sacrificed the infants was 102,000 babies a year. So there's a little bit of contradiction.
So somewhere between 18,000 and 102,000.
A shitload. They had to be under the age of 9.
Okay. Well, that was the
deal.
Babies is a fair bit under the age of 9.
It is. And you kind of pointed out one of the problems. You know, as far as everyone was aware, including via George, there wasn't a huge population in Formosa.
I want to know. Look, how many babies are born in Australia right now? So we have 25 million people, 102,000. If we were to kill 102,000 children per year, I suspect our population will be going backwards. I think you need a pretty high population to be able to sustain that rate of sacrifice.
I think so.
Mathematicians, can you, or demographers, can you give us a number on how many we can sacrifice to sustain the population?
Yeah, hang on, I'll give you Will's mobile number. Just give him a bell. So when people said, "Oi, how's this possible?" He said, "No, it's cool. Men were permitted to have multiple wives." And they had many children every year, and only some of the sons are sacrificed, but the daughters are preserved for marriage. So that was okay.
Okay. So there's still lots of women with their wombs making lots of
constantly churning out the younglings.
Okay.
And also, if another fun fact about them was if the Formosans were polygamous, but if the wives were disloyal or cheated on the husband had the right to eat the wife. Again. Standard.
Okay.
Standard.
It's great.
Their main food was a serpent they hunted with twigs and branches.
I'm going back to the anthropology honors thesis where you make up a new country, and I'm just thinking there's got to be some rules here. One rule, not just going straight down to anthropophagy. You've got to that's only for special times. You can't just throw in and cannibalism.
It is a special time. You rooted Steve next door. I'm going to fucking eat you. It seems extreme, especially for a first offense. I mean, literally, as a punishment, I kissed the postman. I will eat you.
It's a long way. You're not going to learn any lessons from it.
Yeah. One thing's for sure, there seems to have been a lot of human meat around. That's my impression. So the language. So he used to actually speak gibberish. He'd speak the language to people. And he said it was super internally consistent. So apparently it fooled linguistic scholars right through the 19th century.
So he wasn't just making stuff up on the fly every time. He made it up once.
No. He built it. He built this shit. Like he was actually some kind of a genius, really, when you think about it.
Some kind of a genius. Yes, I'm sure he is some kind of a genius. In the same way as Donald Trump is some kind of a genius.
No, this guy sounds smarter than Trump.
I'm just saying that Donald Trump has a genius for something. Clearly.
Genius is a big word for Trump. He has a perverse gift for being a chap. The alphabet had 20 letters, though, written from right to left, which he figured most Asian languages did. I don't know if that's true.
Oh, it's because on the other side of the world. Like,
yeah.
Like if you look through the world, they're on the back side of it. So obviously they would be writing from the other direction. Yeah,
that makes sense. You'd be good at this.
I solved it.
Apparently the language was a mix of Hebrew, Greek, and just made up shit. So, but I love the fact that linguists, like right into the 19th century, still couldn't crack it. They were like, "Oh, this seems legit," which is pretty impressive.
Hang on, they were still trying to crack this?
Yeah,
like they're spending time on this, like he actually came from somewhere and actually did this.
Yeah, which is confusing because as will become apparent later on.
I just think there's ways to spend your time, and there's that. So.
But linguistics also, I mean, really, it's just the world's most serious dorky problem solvers. I did a year of linguistics, first year uni.
So you know it all.
All of it. Oh, pretty much an expert. They asked me to become a professor, and I said, it wouldn't be fair to the other people.
Yeah, of course.
I feel bad for you. But they half the quizzes in first year linguistics are these little tests, and they're basically problem solving. Like, here's what these words mean. Try and work out what that means given the information you have over here, and you kind of do these little brain teasers.
That's one of those little puzzle books that you get when you're a kid.
Yeah, it was great. It was actually fun. I mean, it's fair to say that people I knew sometimes would smoke the reefers and do it.
What?
People, I didn't know them well, merely acquaintances, but it was entertaining enough. There was homework that other people would sometimes even do.
Stop! Wow, you 60s guys and your homework parties.
It wasn't me; it was people I acquainted with. So to put him in context a little more, so there's a history professor who wrote one of these major sources, a guy called Benjamin Breen. he said, look, Psalmanazar, George was telling us something fundamental about the origins of modernity here. And he was saying at the time, the worlds of seafarers, merchants, slaves, transported criminals, etc., upon which Europe's empires were built, were often based on elaborate fictions. So you've got people like Prester John, who I don't know, Jonathan Swift. Who
I know Prester John.
Of. You know Prester John?
I know Prester John. He was.
What did he write?
I think he made up a fake history of India. But the main thing was, and it actually motivated a huge amount of colonial conquest. He told the story about like a huge pile of gold. Like it was basically, they have fuckloads of treasure in India, and for centuries, I mean, I think Vasco da Gama was a key.
When he wasn't looking for El Dorado in South
America. They were like,
right.
well, they were confused as to whether South America and India were different or the same places because obviously.
Well, you're right. They're brown. These guys are brown. We're white.
How can you tell the
difference?
difference?
Must be the place.
How can you tell the difference?
Yeah.
Well, that's why
Must be the place.
Indians, in America are still called Indians, but same to, but yeah, they were looking for a huge pile of gold out there in India, and it motivated people for hundreds of years to go out and look, and then they went and killed a lot of people and stole a lot of treasure, so it kind of became true.
They went traditional, and this is what this historian's suggesting. So it wasn't as bizarre that this guy was taken seriously by many people as it sounds today.
Yeah.
And he said there was a contemporary book by a guy called George Candidius, who was the first missionary in Taiwan. Some of the stuff wasn't as insane as it sounded. He was inventing tales about Formosan cannibalism, but while he was doing that, other people around him were writing false stories about pirates, utopias, parody accounts like, Jonathan Swift at super intelligent horses and blah, 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 blah.
And people couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah, they couldn't tell.
It's all somewhere aware. And
fake news.
There's either tiny people or real people, and you can't tell the difference. Cool.
Yeah, it was all crazy. And because he tailored it for an Anglican audience and they hated the Catholic Church, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, he had these people waiting to suck it down. They thought it was fantastic. And he was, such a convert. So he was a success story. And as we were saying, like, how the fuck could you check if it was bullshit back then? You just couldn't. So that's kind of exciting. But anyway, eventually it wore off, or it started to wear off.
Oh.
So
what did he do? Did he get something wrong?
He didn't do anything in particular, but people started to say, hey, champ, I've got a few beefs with you. I think this sounds like shit. So he was at a meeting of the Royal Society. I think it was a different meeting to the original one, but I could be wrong. The resident astronomer was Edmund Halley.
He of the comet.
And he asked all these questions. He said, so how long does twilight last on the island? How much sun shines down the chimneys?
Come on.
Classic.
No, I mean, I get if you're an astronomer, you write these things down no matter where you are, but normal people don't.
No.
Normal people don't go, I'm timing twilight again tonight just because.
How long's twilight last?
One
Until
day
it's
I might
dark.
be asked. Like, seriously.
You can tell when it's over because you can't see the sun anymore, doofus. But so, I like the one, how much time does the sun shine down a chimney? George is cleverer than him, and he goes, Formosan chimneys are bent.
Nice.
Therefore, the sun doesn't shine down. And I thought that's pretty quick thinking.
Also, weird question to say how long.
It's so scientist.
I
have a point, and it's like, it's not wrong, but it's just like, seriously, as you said, dude, no one fucking cares except you. No one. Maybe your students. So he got out of that by saying they're bent. A priest and linguist fellow called Father something or other Fontenay said, you're a fraud. He said, Formosa is a province of China, not Japan, so there are claims about it being Japanese, including in that very long title. And George said, no, that's not true. What are other ways that people refer to Formosa? And this Fontenay said, Taiwan, which is also Taiwan.
That sounds good.
Yeah. And so he says to the Jesuit, that's a different island. That's colonized by the Dutch. This one is different. The people from China refer to Formosa as Pak Ando, and natives like him call it Gad Avia.
Cool.
I don't know why.
Which one?
The priest said, fuck that. There's no sound, there was no word in Chinese called Pak, but that kind of disappeared. And the classic, of course, is members of the Royal Society saying, why the hell do you have such light skin?
Yeah, that'll get you.
Kind of stands out. He said, no, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's fine. Because the upper class Formosans live in cool shade and in apartments underground, so it keeps their skin chilly and white. Now, this again sounds ridiculous to us, but it made more sense in the times because what notions of pigmentation and stuff weren't strong. Notions of ethnic distinctions weren't as easy and clear. So this notion of saying, are you Caucasian or not, or making such an accusation wasn't really there.
Yeah.
It wasn't there to be made. So again, it sounds outrageous, but maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, okay.
Which is kind of cool. I mean, I kind of like the idea that you could be at a period where you could just go insane with the stuff you made up, including being golden-haired, blonde skin, light-skinned, blue-eyed, blah, 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 and say, I'm from this place that's basically Japanese.
But the thing that I always wonder about is what are the histories of tiny migration? People that, not the equivalent of backpackers, but they're doing a job. This could be 1,000 years ago or longer. They go and do a job for one farmer, and the next farmer over says, down the road there's something there, and then they get a job on a ship, and they go here and they go there. I'm sure there were people moving all over the world, and because they were illiterate and didn't really care to document it like Marco Polo or the explorers, there must have been people moving around an awful lot, particularly in the big continents. I think this idea that there were hard boundaries between, the Europeans never saw anything from China or wherever until Marco Polo. I think that's delusional.
Also, even the idea that some of these places had such clear country boundaries, to speak, as Europe did. Even for that to be a thing.
I could get my PhD thesis right now and read you some chapters.
Oh, that'd be good.
It's so good.
I can wait.
It's not.
Everyone hit pause. Will's going to go and get his.
That was a fake reach over. It's on a shelf somewhere, but not that shelf, obviously.
I think I can see mine from here. Anyway, so his claims became increasingly less credible, though. So he started to get a bit balmier, and people started to, say, "Hang on, mate," a lot more. So he started to get a little bit less boisterous in his defense. And around 1706, apparently, he confessed to some friends, and then more broadly that it was a bunch of bullshit. So this is what happened eventually. But along the way to this confession, the London society types were already getting a bit bored. And it got to a point where he was described as being a punching bag for the literati in London by 1711.
Those friggin' bullies.
I know, right? And they were saying in 1710, so just before this, a group of his supporters, alleged supporters, maybe it was just him, published a pamphlet. This is a short title, An Inquiry into the Objections Against George Psalmanazar of Formosa, and the pamphlet entirely cleared his name. So the suspicion is it was probably George, but we don't know. So the Spectator, the Spectator is a satirical commie newspaper. Its first edition kicked off with a fake advertisement for an upcoming play about George's, I suppose, hard-on for the virtues and brilliance of cannibalism. And so there's a completely fictitious ad, and it said from the Spectator, on the first day of April, will be performed at the Playhouse in the Haymarket an opera called The Cruelties of Atreus. The scene wherein Thyestes eats his own children is to be performed by Mr. Psalmanazar, lately arrived from Formosa. The whole supper will be set to kettle drums, which is apparently wildly amusing and very, very satirical and droll.
They were a little bit starved of comedy back then as well, though. So,
that's hilarious. The only reason you're not laughing now is you're so blown away by how funny it is.
I get it. Fair enough.
So as London's elite lost interest, he started to go for the plebs. He wanted to get the masses more. So he'd beef up things like stories of cannibalism. And it'd say, for example, after a sacrifice, everyone would sit upon the ground because they have no seats or pews such as you have in England.
Hadn't been invented, no. Not beer nor bread nor seat.
Nope. Or shoes. Only the richer sort have a cushion to sit on. While the flesh is boiling, everyone stands with his hands joined together, looking towards the upper parts of the tabernacle, the temple. After the flesh is boiled, every one of the people takes a piece of flesh from the priest and eats it, and what remains, the priests keep for themselves. So he tells stories like this, and he also, apparently, he got to the point where he would, this is one of my favorite quotes, he started to rely on his displays of extreme drug taking to impress audiences.
What?
Look how much shit I can take.
I mean, look, that's impressive regardless. I'd go and watch that.
What a funny show, though. Look how much weed I can smoke. You're like, what?
I do like this idea, though, that it's like all the crime writers and stuff like that these days. They're all looking for what's the grisliest murder that I can come up with. This guy's, what's the grisliest thing I can say about this civilization?
But he wasn't telling stories about it. He was demonstrating it. So he'd apparently smoke enormous tobacco pipes. He'd take quantities of laudanum, so basically opium, that would kill those who didn't have a proper tolerance. So he'd take drugs like a horse.
Still, it's a weird stage show. It's very, very, what is it, like Lenny Henry or something?
Opium. Watch me get really fucked up on opium, which basically means your eyes go blurry and you fall asleep. Or you just stare at things and go, colours are alive, man.
Okay, that's not a great stage show.
No. I mean, we could give it a go. I think it'd be an even worse podcast because you just hear, A friend of mine had opium. I never did, of course, but a friend of mine did, and they said it was quite good fun. But they didn't seem, I'm told at the time, to be very entertaining.
Yeah, all right.
Apparently he made a point that the people on Formosa were really nuts about drugs, particularly smoke, And he said the ladies smoke perpetually, and one of George's mothers smoked 6 pounds every day of tobacco.
6 pounds.
6 pounds of tobacco, which is about 900 kilos, isn't it?
No, it's 3 kilos, but still 3 kilos of tobacco.
Fuck me though.
Did you not do that conversion? Like seriously?
No, I know it's a lot.
Did you not see numbers and work? But still, 3 kilos of tobacco. I don't understand how you could get that into your lungs. Like
imagine after a week of that, if you got through it alive. Unless you're sort
of doing some sort of weird smoking where you grab like a handful and sort of just hold it near your face or something.
No, I think you put it on a fire and you put a blanket over your head.
That's about it. That's about it.
I wouldn't be a fan.
You do hear occasionally about these. There were some guys once, I think they were in Singapore, who did a cigarette smoking competition, and I don't know what the number was.
Oh, you fucking idiots!
Yeah, they were just chain smoking as fast, as quickly as they could, and yeah, so brain hemorrhage, I believe. But it was sort of over a 1 day period, and they smoked thousands of cigarettes. It's like,
God, what a horror story!
Not good. And it's also Singapore. I'm surprised at you. I thought, if I was going to stereotype of people to do that, I would have thought somewhere, more like Russia or something like that.
Or Bogan, Australia.
Yeah.
How many durries can you take in an hour, mate? Can I smoke more than one at a time? I mean, that'd be the test as well. So George started getting more desperate, as you can say. So look how many drugs I can take, and let me tell you about how they eat babies. And apparently he started to get a little bit jobless. He'd wander between jobs. One of the jobs was he marketed Chinaware with the tagline, "A white sort of Japan." I don't know.
Obviously, like comedy, marketing worked a little bit different back there. Or are they saying, is it like China? When they call China, Japan, is something like that?
White sort of Japan. I can imagine them trying to describe the culture that way so that the Euros would be happy going there, but to describe crockery?
But look, at least that sounds like a job. Like it's a job where he's
selling shit.
He's selling shit.
He's selling shit.
Whereas lying about another country seems not really really a job. I mean,
what do you do? I lie about another country.
Great work if you can get it, but
do you lie about all of them? No, just one.
Just one. I'm picking on
just
this
one.
I'm
a specialist. I'm really good at it though. Man, can I tell you shit about this fake country? He also took up painting fans, not ceiling fans, but flutter to cool you down, which apparently didn't bring him a steady income. Go figure. He tutored in Latin. He briefly re-entered military service as a clerk. So he kind of wandered around. And apparently, ultimately, he lived the rest of his working life as he was described as a hack, one of the many Grub Street writers that churned out encyclopedia entries, histories and things like this.
Look, maybe not. Maybe you should put a boundary up around encyclopedias and test that they actually know their knowledge first. But, who am I?
Yeah, this is olden times. Apparently, he'd write for 12 hours a day. You get paid piss all for it. It was a minimum wage job. He'd write 12 hours a day and sustain himself with 10 to 12 drops of opium mixed with a pint of punch. I think punch means something different then too. I don't think it was like a nice fruit basket. I think it was something
it's
maybe...
pineapple juice and red wine. That sounds great. And some opium.
What a horrible pineapple juice and red wine. Do you want some? No.
Look, I haven't made punch in a while. I don't know what's in it, but I assume it's pineapple juice and red wine.
You could call that punch.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't stop you. If you said this is punch, I'm like, I don't know that it's not. I don't think I'd want any. And I love one of the historian guy, Benjamin Breen, said that as a historian, this is just how he came across George in his story. This is why he's writing about him. He said he's an historian of modern globalization, the drug trade. And he first became interested in George because he gave surprisingly detailed descriptions of opium addiction. And they were amongst the earliest first-hand descriptions of recreational drug abuse in Western literature. So he started reading about that and then became hooked on George's inventions of Formosan culture. And that's how he went down that rabbit hole.
That's awesome.
That's cool, yeah. So anyway, George published another book in 1732 called The General History of Printing. Sounds great.
Leave it alone. I'd be interest. I'm a
the whole book
kind of stuff. Yeah, probably not. And not from a guy that lies inherently. So
first thing I want my author who's writing a documentary. I don't want someone who lies.
Yeah.
Fuck you, picky. He also contributed quite a long time later, 1747. He contributed to a complete system of geography, including an entry on Formosa, in which he referred to himself in the third person.
Why not?
And in that book, he admitted that George was a liar and said to readers, "Don't worry, there'll be a full confession after his death."
Wait, George is a liar. George that is me is a liar. I'm confused.
Yeah, he's writing about himself in the third person.
Okay.
And so he writes his history of Formosa in the encyclopedia and says, this guy's a total bastard liar. I went, check him out. But don't worry, afterwards there'll be a confession after his death. And it turned out there was. After he died, he left behind an autobiography.
Oh, fair enough.
I know. So he died 1763, and the following year his memoirs were published. And his memoirs were called, this is short, but it's interesting, Memoirs of ... no name, comma, formerly known by the name George Psalmanazar, a reputed native of Formosa. So it's known as Memoirs of ...
Yeah, I'm coming clean.
Yeah. His real birth name was not in it and is still unknown today, so no one actually knows what he was originally called. There are some details of his early life, but we don't know how much of it's bullshit. He did talk about some of the stories and how he built bullshit about Formosa in there, so he kind of tells some stories about his stories. He says he wrote the biography as an act of personal penance, so he's all very, contrite. He said he considered at least 12 years of his life were, quote, misspent in a course of the most shameless idleness, vanity and extravagance, including unspecified gallantry with the fair sex, with many of whom I was becoming a great favorite. So he got laid a lot.
And is he saying that's in his bad time?
Yes.
Oh.
I think that's a bit of humble bragging.
Oh, of course it is.
I did a lot of bagging and chicks digged me. Yeah. His memoirs began with the line, "The last will and testament of me, a poor, sinful and worthless creature commonly known by the assumed name of George Psalmanazar." Which is, poor me. He described in his book that his hope was to undo as much as was in his power all the mischief he'd done. I mean, so contrite. But
he's just looking for another
holes in
bestseller.
his story.
Yeah, he's looking for another bestseller after he's dead.
That's determined, isn't it? I'm so starved for fame. I still want it after I'm gone.
Well, look, we can hope that maybe one day, Donald Trump will put his autobiography out when he's, after he's dead.
The whole shit and nothing but the shit.
Here's the actual truth.
Fuck, I'd read that. I'd read the crap out of that.
Yeah, but there's no capacity for him to do that.
No, it'd be an absolute
I think this is quite contrite of this George Psalmanazar to think, oh, you know what, I'll come clean.
Oh, he wouldn't do it out of contrition. He'd do it out of, fucked you, fooled you all. So apparently his book was just full of holes. There was no account of his time after he arrived in England. All these kinds of, it still wasn't clear even what country he was born in, so he didn't leave those clues. Apparently a bunch of people researched for quite a long time afterwards. So even, Benjamin Disraeli, the British Prime Minister, his old man was into it. So he was studying the guy. There's been studies done out of Penn State, I assume, the National Taiwan University, and they still haven't been able to find out much. They're just fairly convinced he came from southern France. But it was interesting that elite figures from the Royal Society, the Bishop of London, all these other people fell for it entirely, and then eventually they exposed him as a liar. And the interesting sort of end of his life, as he was getting really old and doing his hack writing, Samuel Johnson, the dictionary guy, decided he was the bomb.
Really?
Yeah, I loved him. And apparently Johnson said, "I never sought much after anybody, but I sought after George the most. I used to go and sit with him at an alehouse in the city." So it's probably because he was just such a cool guy to hear shit.
I'm sure he's great to have a beer with.
Yeah. And so Johnson apparently regularly mentioned, enthusiastically would talk about George, and he would claim he was so highly esteemed in his own neighborhood that, quote, scarce any person, even children, passed without showing him the usual signs of respect.
Nice.
So apparently he was well known and well loved, according to Johnson. And a confidant of Johnson's recorded one memory, and it said, the confidant said to him, "When I asked Dr. Johnson who was the best man he had ever known, Psalmanazar was the unexpected reply."
Who asked that question?
Hester Thrale.
No, I don't mean specifically Hester Thrale. I mean,
you did not have a name.
Why do people? Who? It sounds like such a fake question. I'm setting you up here to say me, but who is the best person you've ever known?
Can you imagine that? Is it me? No, it's this fake bullshit Formosan.
I'm going to keep asking until you get the answer right. It's me.
Poor Hester. You can imagine. Oh, okay, that's fine. I'll just write it down. I'll just become famous because I knew what you said. So that's George Psalmanazar, or whoever the hell he was really called.
Well, that's awesome. I love that.
Take that, anthropology.
Yeah, go make up some countries, I reckon. What's the criteria?
The level of detail must be wild. It'd be like writing a hardcore video game or a mega novel or something. So it's a Game of Thrones, but on steroids, because non-crazy people believed it to be real. I'm sure some crazy think Game of Thrones is real.
But it's I think it's getting down to the detail. What is it? I think Stephen King was saying, you write a character and you got to show what they care about, but also give him some quirk. He sniffs a lot, or he smoked his cigarettes backwards, or something shit like that. And
blew through them?
Yeah, I don't know.
What's
I'm
the
just saying.
filter?
I'm just trying to make up some sort of random.
Stephen
detail.
King was weird, man. I didn't know that.
But what I'm saying is that
Yeah.
if you're making up a whole country, anthropology students, or you, Rod, or you listener, make up
Yeah.
some weird details.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it now. I'd love to see the original book. I reckon it would be spectacular. Because like the snippets that I saw, it just looks astounding. And just what motivates you?
I don't know. Fame, something fun to do.
I love the balls of it too.
You're
I have
bored?
long golden hair. I'm bright clear skin, probably blue eyed. Yeah, I'm from this Asian nation. Obviously.
Awesome. The Wholesome Show is not entirely made up.
No, not
It's
entirely.
Not from Formosa. And
What if I made up the entire story of this being made up, though?
I don't know.
What?
I don't know. The Wholesome Show is brought to you by the Australian National Centre for the Public Awareness of Science to help with your awareness of science.
And other needs. We can help with whatever needs you have.
I'm Will Grant.
You are.
He's Rod Lamberts. Wash your hands. Stay safe. Love you all.
Can you see that from here?